episode 190 of Futures Radio Show, sponsored by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world effectively manage risk. For access to free educational tools and resources for the active individual trader, please visit activetrader.cmegroup.com.
Every day, traders and investors dive in to tackle the ever-changing markets to find opportunity. Futures Radio Show is your number one source for answers to the questions that all market participants want to ask. Veteran futures trader Anthony Crudele sits down with the most influential leaders and top traders in the industry. Now, here's your host, Anthony Crudele.
Hey everyone, before we get started today, I want to thank our sponsors. CME Group, Trading Technologies, RJO Futures, and Top Step Trader. Now today I spoke with Steve Tumen, CEO of Deep Systems. Steve and I had a very interesting conversation about his backstory as a trader and as a CEO. I was very impressed on how he has been able to successfully stay ahead of the curve and adapt to the changing conditions in the markets and market technology. Steve explains to us how he is filling a void in the industry with Deep Systems, as they are a provider of next-generation financial infrastructure. We talked about Indigo, their institutional-grade digital asset trading platform. Finally, Steve tells us what he thinks about the crypto space. As usual, thank you all for listening, and please enjoy this episode. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hi, Anthony. How are you?
Doing well. What's there not to like about being down here at FIA Boca?
It's a little better than being in Chicago right now.
No doubt about that. So it's great to speak with you today. And when I saw that you were going to be here at FIA Boca, I wanted to have you on the show because I wanted to learn more about Deep Systems. Now, I know it's a newer company, and you're also the CEO of Equitech and have been for 20 years or so. And now you're also the CEO of Deep Systems. So before we begin talking about Deep Systems and everything that you guys have going on there today, let's start off with your backstory. Tell us how you got started in the industry.
I graduated from Michigan in 1980, proud Wolverine with an accounting degree from the business school. I had a choice of moving to New York, Chicago, or Cincinnati, where I grew up, and I ended up choosing Chicago, mostly because I went to New York and I didn't leave my hotel room, and Cincinnati was sort of a known commodity to me, so Chicago seemed like a great place to start. I got a job with a company that was at that time called Pete Marwick Mitchell and Company. It's an accounting firm, now known as KPMG. I was there for a year when another friend of mine, who was a year younger, came back from Michigan and was trading options off the floor in Chicago. He was a year younger than me and was making 5 times as much money. So he looked at me and said, you know, this is really right up your alley. It's all numbers. You should come check it out. And that's what I did. I traded on the floor for 15 years, and I knew at that point in time I was a 39-year-old trader, and I knew I didn't want to be a 40-year-old trader. So I moved my family back to Cincinnati for a year. I started a broker-dealer. I raised money for public companies that were having a challenging time doing a secondary for any number of reasons. Came home one day, and my wife and kids were sitting on the couch and said, we're moving back to Chicago. You can come with us if you want, but it's not a deal breaker. So looking at those faces, I knew what my choice had to be. So I came back to Chicago, and guys that I had been doing business with for the first 15 years were managing a very large index arbitrage group and had developed a pretty nifty piece of software to manage the activities of a group of off-floor traders commingled with a group of on-floor traders. This was right at the advent of electronic trading on the horizon, and also happened to coincide with the time that the SEC sort of dictated to the options exchanges that they didn't like single listing. They wanted IBM listed on every exchange, which at the time was 4, right? So it became clear to me that we had an advantage because, well, A, we had capital, and B, we had a technology platform. The idea of having operations on different exchanges meant that you needed the ability to disseminate quotes. Not every group had the ability to do that. you needed the ability to interface with the order flow providing firms. So there was a marketing element that never had, that traders generally hadn't had to think about in terms of their business. And so I came in and did a roll-up of DPM and specialist posts on the different options exchanges.
Oh, very cool. When you were in the pit, what trading floor were you on?
I was primarily on the CBOE. I mostly spent most of my career in the OEX, what became the S&P 100 options pit. It was cash settled option. It was 400 people in that pit standing toe to toe through some of the most challenging trading circumstances that exchanges had seen, meaning the crash in 1987 and the mini crash in 1989. It was a fascinating time to be trading.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. And you've been able to adapt to the changing conditions that we've seen over the years, from pit trading to electronic trading. So that's why I'm very curious about Deep Systems. You guys launched this in October of last year. I looked it up online. You guys are offering infrastructure, IT, software services, and more. Give us the rundown of what Deep Systems does.
So Deep Systems is a provider of what we consider to be next generation financial infrastructure. The pace of change in terms of technology and regulation inside of our industry is increasing, right? The ways that you need to connect to the marketplace and how systems need to adapt is changing day by day. Most firms are operating legacy infrastructures with disparate vendors that are not suited to change, right? So when you bring something new, particularly into a larger institution, it requires an immense amount of frankly, reworking or rethinking how a system should work. And so inside of our firm, we made a conscious decision a few years ago to look at what financial infrastructure really looks like now, and given all these changes, what we think it should look like. Historically, inside of Equitech, what we had done was we developed applications and then we fed them with data. And data would come from a number of different places. If it was a trading application, it would come from one place. If it was a compliance application, it might come from a different place. If it was an accounting application, it would come from a different place. Well, when cybersecurity becomes more of an issue in our world, right, those all become points of vulnerability, right? And so in a changing world, right, the themes basically have changed in the trading world. Everybody wants to talk about data and everybody wants to talk about cybersecurity. So we approached this business and said, what if we built a data ecosystem, right? We wrap it in cybersecurity, so it's all in one place, right? We build common work processes, workflows, so that once you learn how to connect to one part of the system, it gives you great freedom to do many other things inside of the system.
You know what's funny about our industry is that nobody likes change, but yet our industry is always changing.
It's unbelievable.
Right?
It's unbelievable. And what ends up happening, and what has happened over the last 15 years, is that firms have built up key dependencies inside the organization that aren't necessarily revenue producing streams. So what's happened inside of our industry in the last 15 years is that firms have built a lot of key dependencies that aren't revenue generating sources. And so you become dependent on network architecture and network architects. You become dependent on product support people. You become dependent on technology choices that may have been made by somebody who's no longer at the firm, or code that was written by somebody who's no longer at the firm, right? That becomes very challenging for a large organization to manage as something new comes along, like crypto.
So you've proven that throughout the test of time, you have the ability to change gears as the market requires all of us to change gears and to adapt to the new technologies. What type of clients are you targeting with Deep Systems?
So the beauty of this is that we feel like it applies to organizations all across the financial spectrum. The interesting thing is, if you walked into a broker you would know pretty quickly when you walked in the door what they did. If you walked into a prop shop, you might not know right away what they do, but you'd know that they're not a broker. And if you walked into an exchange, you know that they're not a prop shop. However, if you walked inside of the technology cages of these various businesses, you look around and you have a very difficult time telling the difference, right? And that's because the preponderance of technology that is operating inside of a financial business is very similar across all those businesses, whether you're an exchange, whether you're a prop shop, whether you're a hedge fund, whether you're an RIA, whether you're a vendor, right? The technology footprint from an observation standpoint looks remarkably similar. And that was sort of our cathartic moment, was to say, why aren't these firms just focusing on the things that make them unique? Right? If 75, 80% is the same, why aren't you focusing on the 20% that makes you different? Because that's where your enterprise value is developed, and that's where your identity really comes from.
I love that. You're filling a void that you feel is very necessary in our industry.
Correct. And the way we go about doing that, again, is re-architecting how a financial firm can think about a technology stack and what parts of it they should be operating, and what effectively an asset they can bring in that makes them more flexible, scalable, and most important, welcome of change.
Today you guys issued a press release. Talk to us a little bit about that.
We launched a product today called Indigo. It's a cross-asset, exchange-agnostic trading platform for digital assets, right? Where we feel like there's going to be great opportunity in this space is the fact that not only are there many exchanges that are popping up now for which you can move not only the physical digital assets, but derivatives related to those digital assets. Each one of the exchanges, many of them are also custodians. So in a typical trading environment, what you think of when you're managing a position is that I have my position as the prime broker, I make trades, my trades are reported to the prime broker, we have common records, it's a pretty simple system, right? In this world, you've got dozens and even more on the horizon exchanges. Some of them are custodians, some of them aren't custodians. You have your legacy custodians in the futures world. The idea of not just trading, right? The idea of managing positions and what you're able to trade at any moment in time in these various venues, it's a challenge that is really not something that most financial firms are in a position to address, right? And we viewed this as a great opportunity for us to demonstrate the extensibility of the Deep Systems platform, because this is an application that we wrote in a period of about 2 months with a couple of people, right? A front-end trading system might take most firms a lot longer to build. And in trading, as you know, opportunity is fleeting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when I read about Indigo this morning, this is a mouthful, so hopefully I can get this right. It's the industry's first cross-asset exchange neutral institutional grade digital asset trading platform. I think I nailed it there. I don't know, right? Right, Steve?
That's pretty impressive, isn't it?
Explain to our audience why Indigo is a one of a kind in our industry.
So, from an institutional standpoint, right, this is a challenging environment to envision yourself getting into, right? And so far the products that we've seen have limitations in terms of what we think an institution is going to want down the road, right? There are a number of spot trading platforms. There is a platform where you can trade futures in spot, but you're limited in terms of the exchanges that you have access to in that regard. We think institutions are going to want and need the opportunity to trade anywhere they want, and also be prepared by doing their technology selection today that's going to enable them to also trade equities and options that are not only related to the digital currencies. You also need to be able to hedge your currency risk. You need to be able to have a sophisticated risk platform, and perhaps most importantly, you need a partner who is already has relationships with the various trading venues that you want to operate on, because the onboarding and the negotiation process for how money will move and what sort of treatment you get relative to the 40,000 other people that are trying to open an account that day. Having a partner who can operate sort of as a concierge on your behalf allows you to get started fluidly and in a way that you can feel comfortable that you are sort of not the fish at the poker table.
So I find this extremely interesting. I said that you're filling a void in the industry. So I'm wondering, how do you convince clients and customers that this is something that they need? So what I'm asking is, how much demand is there for Indigo right now?
If you think about what this asset class means, I don't know about you, Anthony, but there's not a dinner that I go to with my friends that after the pleasantries, somebody at the table goes, "Are you trading cryptocurrencies?" Right? These are retail thinkers, right? But these are also people who are looking at their money managers and going, "What's my exposure to this?" The number of institutional players in this space is almost negligible relative to what we think it's going to be over the next 5 years. And it's not an easy space to get into. It's not an easy space to figure out. The big players are still trying to figure out, right? And so when you think about what a wealth manager might need, or if you think about what a institutional broker might need, right? Having access to sophisticated tools that they can focus on that relationship with their customer and know that they're holding some very powerful technology. That's going to be a great opportunity for them to not only take care of the customers that they have, but to attract new business.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that. And you're right, there isn't a dinner or a week that goes by that I don't get an email or a question about the crypto space. So you and I are here today at FIA Boca. What do you think about the crypto space in general?
There's been very few businesses that I've encountered and industries that I've encountered over my 30 some odd years in this business that you look at and you can stretch your imagination as best you can, and you still won't be able to really encompass what the possibilities are here. And so I can't tell you that I know exactly what one or more of these digital assets is worth. What I can tell you is it's a tidal wave, right? And the ways that this technology can affect the business processes that happen in the world are almost infinite. So it's really a question of who has the best imagination and can sort of forward think about where this technology applies and how it applies. And it's very interesting. Yesterday in the opening panel, right, there was a big center of discussion around understanding what distributed ledger means is one thing, right? You've got all this world that doesn't operate inside of a world of digital ledger. So the process of transition is an immense opportunity in terms of the speed at which different institutions are going to adopt this technology, and technology providers are going to need to both support the new and support the old, because they're going to have clients that are doing both at different times. And so that concierge approach, that management of process, right, we think that there's going to be a great opportunity for that.
Excellent insight today. But we're not done yet. I have some rapid fire questions if you're ready for those.
Shoot.
All right, everyone, our rapid fire segment is sponsored by Curating Technologies. Access the global markets from virtually anywhere with TT. They are the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform. And now you can trade cryptocurrency spot and derivative markets side by side for the first time. For more information, visit tradingtechnologies.com. First question, what trader has influenced your life the most and why?
I hope this doesn't sound different than the way I intend it to sound, but the truth is, every trader, the person that influences them the most is them, right? Becoming a trader is a journey about the self, right? It's absorbing information. Certainly you can have mentors, but at the end of the day, the best traders are the people that think about who they are, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and try to manage that process.
What's the number one resource you spend your time on?
Curating resources.
What's your favorite book about trading or the markets?
My favorite book, hands down, is Reminiscence of a Stock Operator. It was written by Edwin Lefevre in 1923, and it is among the first reads that any trader who wants to get in this business should pick up.
What's the best piece of advice that you've received about trading or the markets?
Anthony, the one thing that has stuck with me from the day that I started trading, the first thing that I heard when I walked in the door was, you never make the trade, no matter how good it looks. You never make the trade that could keep you from coming in tomorrow.
Now, if you could give a piece of advice to the new people interested in getting involved in trading, what would it be?
Find a mentor and understand big data.
Last question for today, Steve. If you weren't involved with the markets, you'd be doing what?
I'd be starting a FinTech business, Anthony.
All right, Steve. This was great. Where can people find you on social media, and what's a website they can check out?
You can come to deepsystems.com. If you want to find out more about Indigo, you'll come to deepsystems/Indigo, at Deep Systems HQ on Twitter.
All right, everybody. You know, I highly recommend you go and check out Steve and Deep Systems on Twitter and their website. Steve, thank you so much for coming on Futures Radio Show today.
Thanks so much, Anthony.
Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you have any questions or comments for myself or my guests, please visit futuresradioshow.com and sign up to be a premium member for free. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes.